Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on where you're joining us in the world. Welcome to Authors at Drucker. I'm Dave Specht, Director of the Global Family Business Institute at the Drucker School of Management. At the Drucker School, we aspire to become the global meeting place for the world's most influential business-owning families. This conversation today represents progress in our achievement of that objective. Authors at Drucker is an interview series where we feature top authors that write books about issues impacting business-owning families. Authors at Drucker is made possible from the generous sponsorship from the James E. Hughes Jr. Foundation, and Jay is here with us today. So again, thank you, Jay. The foundation is dedicated to advancing the study of family governance and generational well-being. We at the Drucker School feel very aligned and very grateful to Jay and his foundation. On the last Authors at Drucker, we featured a book called Experiential Billionaire by Bridget Hilton and Joe Huff. If you missed that, please feel free to check it out on our website or on our YouTube channel. Finally, I wanted to mention just a couple of other exciting things that we have going on at the Drucker School. First, we've launched our certificate in advising family enterprises. And we're really excited about that. We're partnering with institutions all over the country and all over the world, actually, to train advisors on how to humanize the process of giving advice for multi-generational family companies. So if you're a part of an institution that would be interested in learning more about that training, feel free to reach out to me and I'll give you more information. And also we've launched our Generational Wealth Masterclass. This morning I was in Uganda with a group of about 120 of my closest Ugandan friends. Going over the third session of the Generational Wealth Masterclass, our relationship with money, and it was a fascinating session. So if you're interested in learning more about the Generational Wealth Masterclass and how you can get access to that, again, please feel free to reach out to me. Now on to the star of the show. Today's guest on Authors at Drucker is Richie Norton. And I'm going to stop sharing this so you can look at his smiling face instead of the picture. Richie's the author of Anti-Time Management. He's also the author of The Power of Starting Something Stupid. He's a serial entrepreneur and executive coach to CEOs. He's been published in and featured in Forbes, Bloomberg, Businessweek, Inc., Entrepreneur, and I'll just say, and other publications because it gets kind of long. He's the CEO and co-founder of PROUDUCT, an Inc. 5000 company. He's a global entrepreneurship solution helping businesses go from idea to market with full service sourcing, product strategy, and end-to-end supply chain. You'll learn more about these principles and you'll see why he developed the company that he did, because he's practicing what he's preaching, people. So Richie, thanks for joining us at Authors at Drucker.
Such an honor. Super grateful to be here. I love the work that you're doing, Dave. I love, obviously, as we all do, the greatest management consultant legend ever, Peter Drucker. Honestly, I'm just so grateful to be here. So thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks for being here. So today we're here to talk about your book, Anti-Time Management. And first of all, I love how tactical it is. Obviously, it goes kind of high level and kind of really, makes you think. But then it's very, very actionable. And maybe we can start with the title. I know for every author, picking a title sometimes is the difference between the book being successful and read or it, never really making the shelves. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose Anti-Time Management as your title?
Sure. I went through lots of different title ideas. At one point, I was going to call it Time Tipping. My publisher is Hachette. They're one of the top 5, publishers in the world out of New York. And they thought that was one that would stick better, for various reasons. But it actually makes more sense because if you look at, first of all, just in honoring Peter Drucker, a lot of the things that I say, they honestly do harken back to what he was teaching. He was an actual renegade back in the day, saying the most horrible things to the current management people, and they hated him for it. And they also loved him for it. You know what I mean? So I think we're finally in an age where actually we're realizing some of the things that he had said, where they were impossible to even imagine outside of his brain, way back then. So if you look at the history of time management, you could start with like following the sun around in the shadows to try and figure out when you do stuff. But in reality, it started the way we think of it as scientific management in the late 1800s. And it began at a time when the world was changing and different people from different countries were coming into the United States. And it was a crazy time. But what's the problem with it, I'm just going to fast forward, is that there's no problem with it at all. It changed the world. It made everything efficient, right? But today we use the word time management as if it's some sort of self-help guide, when in reality, it was designed specifically to measure every drop of blood, sweat, and tears from workers. It was the actual opposite of having more time. It was specifically designed to keep people working and busy, even to their hand motions in cue with one another. And the people back then, if you look at the history, and I've gone deep into this, I not just in my book, but even outside my book, got a whole 2-hour-long deep dive podcast on the very specifics of how this all went down. But at some point in time, the people started calling themselves wooden men. Now, wooden men were those things that you see at Disneyland, where those wooden puppets are kind of moving. That is what they said happened to them, because it was for the first time ever that the head had been separated from the body. Before, there were artisans and people and creative people that would go and they'd work in pockets and make things happen. All of a sudden now, if you read the whole book about scientific management, what they literally did was they said, let's collect all this information, take it from them, separate the head from the body by making it a management thing, so that we can have people that have no skills, no mind of their own, no abilities, do all the work. And we'll take care of it up here. And that created mass efficiency, but it also created a gigantic, quote unquote, deficiency in actual human behavior. And that's why now AI is so intriguing, because it's going to do all the things that robots should be doing anyways. And it makes us more human ultimately.
Richie, what do you think Peter Drucker would think of knowledge, the term knowledge worker today, and where we've arrived?
I think he would tell us that that's an old thought, because we don't have knowledge workers anymore. The knowledge is ubiquitous. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
That's not an opinion. You know what I mean? It's a totally different thing now. Yeah.
So one of the things I really enjoy is just the way that you make things memorable in the book. You use an acronym, TIME. Today is my everything. And again, it helps the material to become sticky in your brain, and maybe I'll remember it in more than a week. Can you talk about how you discovered that time is your everything? In the book, you allow yourself to get pretty vulnerable.
Sure. I'll share that, and I'll give some people just some real quick context. I totally understand what this looks like. There's a long hair guy in Hawaii in a pink shirt. My dog's at my feet, and what he's saying the weirdest things I've never heard before, but they sound true, but I'm still not sure about it. Like I 100% am self-aware of what's happening. I've also just in the last 12 months spent tons of time in England and in London. I'm on Marshall Goldsmith's top 100 coaches. Spent a lot of time in Scotland. I just got back from China, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Northern China. I have a son in Angola right now. I spend my time in the world doing these things. Just so happens that I also can do it from my computer in a pink t-shirt. Okay, so there's that. Okay, I want to put this into context. But I also want to be very nice to like my parents who taught me nice things, and my grandparents who taught me nice things, as well as your parents and grandparents, because the world we live in today, I know this sounds weird, but it's not I know it's the 21st century, but it's not like it was the 20th century. When we talk about the 1980s, the 1990s, this will break your brain. Your children and grandchildren don't call it that. They call it the late 1900s. You don't understand, like we are that far ahead. And we are almost a quarter century into the new century and still living like it's 1977 as far as bureaucracy goes. Why? And that's what's happening right now. Okay. My companies do well, probably not as well as your guys's, but as far as as I'm concerned, family is everything. And here's why. And one more thing. Things did change dramatically night to day in management during, obviously, since 2020. It's the first time in the history of the world that the entire world all came together and had to shut down, so to speak, for a second, reevaluate. And also the smoke screen was removed, where everyone said, oh, yeah, it depends on the kind of work. I get that you have to use your hands for most things to make actual things happen. I totally get that. But for knowledge workers, so to speak, it was the first time that collectively the magic trick disappeared. Like, oh, you actually don't have to come into work. We only want you here to bring up our real estate valuations. That's what we're seeing today. Come back to the office. Our real estate just dropped 40% because nobody's here in New York. All right. That's Google it. It's all there. Okay, so I grew up meeting lots of different people, telling me, rich people, famous people who told me, and I would ask them about work-life balance, and they would tell me there's no such thing. And I believed them and I agreed with them, but I also thought, but if you're working your whole life so that one day you might have more time with your family, why are you sacrificing your family so that one day you can have more time with them? It didn't make sense to me. And I quickly learned after writing, I'll tell my story in a second, but I quickly learned after writing The End of Time, Anti-Time Management, was that how you spend your time is how you show your love. And if you sacrifice what you love for success, you get neither. And I interviewed hundreds of people in retirement who told me, most of them, they waited for a time when they'd have more time, more education, more experience, and more money to do the things that they wanted to do, only to find out that when they got there, guess what? The world had changed, and they also still needed more time, more education, more experience, and more money.
And
whereas the ones who were quote unquote
health too.
and health, or a spouse had passed away or sick, and I learned that the quote unquote ones that said they themselves that they felt they were successful were the ones that did what they could, what they had, where they were, and prioritized their values. The idea is to value your time, not time your values. If you're timing your values, you're basically saying you don't have values because they're worthless at this point in time. That's what, and we lie to ourselves. But if you value your time, guess what happens? You create positive constraints to do the thing that you want to do, which allows you to become quote unquote more efficient and more effective, because now you have less time possibly to do the thing you want to do, but as a responsible person, you still get them done. That's why nobody's more productive than a procrastinator with an impending deadline.
Yeah.
They move mountains overnight, man. You need a deadline. So my brother-in-law lived on and off with us when I first got married for like 5 years. And out of nowhere, he passed away in his sleep at the age of 21. And when that happened, I was in my young 20s, and I was like, wow, like it blew our minds, but also it was like, he won't live to be 65 and retired and then live his dreams. That wasn't a thing for him. So it was a mental shift. A couple of years later, we had our fourth son, and we named him Gavin after my brother-in-law, Gavin. His name was Gavin. And he brought so much joy into our lives, and he got a cough. And the cough was no big deal. We took him to the doctors. They said he was fine. The cough persisted. They said he's fine. The cough persisted. The doctor said maybe he has something called RSV. At some point in time, we took him to the hospital again, and they said, you need to stay. And they didn't look, I don't know why they didn't look at it sooner, but we were there for quite some time, and they finally figured out that he had something called pertussis, also known as whooping cough. And we're praying for our baby that he'll be okay. My wife's blogging, pray for our son. And there's even somebody in Istanbul that said he stood up all night long, praying for our son. It was a whole thing. And I remember one night a nurse came in and said, you guys need to stay the night, which was an odd thing to say because we obviously were there 24/7. Like we were never not there at night. But I understood it was a clue, and that he wasn't going to make it. And I remember my baby boy just being on this, hospital bed. I'm on one side, my wife's on the other. And we knew this experience could destroy us, destroy our marriage, destroy all of our, all the good things we've tried to create and build together. But we promised ourselves that we would do our best to I don't know, come closer with each other, as opposed to letting us tear us apart. Like now I kind of say it like, make us better, not bitter, that kind of idea. I remember they took out all the wires, they took out all the tubes, and I held them for a second, handed him to my wife. I'm just on my knees. She's in the rocking chair. I have my hand on his chest, on his heart, feeling for those last beats. And I remember just how awful it was, feeling helpless as a father. There's nothing you can do about this. And I remember leaving the hospital empty-handed, and I later asked my wife, like, how did you do it? And, there was a nurse came in, a different one. She said, can I hold your baby after he had passed? And so this wonderful angel, let us be able to get our act together and do that. But my wife said she felt like there was, like, her name's Natalie. She felt like there was some other Natalie there with her, so to speak, like holding her hand, someone bigger and stronger than she ever knew she could be, that helped us get us through that. We have faith, but I'll tell you this. A mentor of mine asked me, she said, what did you learn from this experience, from your brother-in-law passing away and your son passing away? And I said, I don't know. And my wife said, ask me in a year. But ultimately, I came up with something that I call Gavin's Law, which is, I hope, something you guys take with you is this. Live to start to live. Because when you live to start those ideas that are pressing on your mind, you really will start living. There are so many people. To me, there's nothing sadder, unfortunately, than a rich and famous person who is sad. Because on the outside, they have everything. But as you and I know, it means nothing.
Yeah.
It means nothing. It literally means nothing. Sure, you have more flexibility. Sure, you can make waves. Sure, you can donate. Sure, you can build generational wealth. That's something. But when you have nobody to share it with that you care about, it's nothing. I know you guys understand this.
Yeah.
So the idea is, if you have an idea that's pressing on your mind and you're not doing something about it, we label it as stupid. Not that it's inherently stupid, but because we're scared. Or someone else should do it. Or I can't do it. Or rather, if you're on a pedestal, it's a big fall to start from the quote-unquote bottom again. Yeah. So that's why I wrote The Power of Starting Something Stupid. I'll tell you a couple more things just so people understand where I'm coming from, and then we can get more to business and management. But after that, we brought in 3 foster kids. We were not foster parents. A mom just kind of left them on our doorstep, not even joking. She asked us to babysit them, didn't come back. 7-year-old girl and 1-year-old twins. They ended up coming into our home for 2 years. The mom eventually came around with the state and got them. And it was a wonderful, awful experience, because having them, they became ours, but having them leave, there was reasons that scared us. You know what I mean? When they left. And that hurts in different ways, maybe even harder ways than a kid passing away. Because a kid passing away, there's a finality and you feel like you're going to see him again. Whereas with a child that's outside of your care that you love, you don't know what's happening to them in the world. There's danger every single day.
Yeah.
Right after that, my wife had a stroke and lost her memory. And right after that, my son got hit by a car crossing the street and should be dead, but he's okay. And I remember thinking, does God hate me? And then I realized, you know what? Things happen. Love God unconditionally and do the best that you can with the time you have. So when I work on business, I intentionally measure not just for cash flow or profits or whatever you're measuring for. I measure for time. I measure for time flow. I measure for the fact that, can this project enable me to have more time with my kids? Not will it enable me later, but will it literally produce the ability to have a castle and live in it and be a moat that protects it? Because most people think, I'm going to do 10 steps and then have it. Or you could think more circular, build the castle, then the moat. The moat protects the castle. Now, I'm using lots of analogies and going crazy and telling you things, but I hope you understand where this is coming from. And ultimately, let me tell you this. anti-time management is far more productive than time management because it's asymmetrical. A small input creates a great output, and it allows you to value both your time and your values now rather than sacrifice them on the altar of quote unquote work, which is probably unimportant until later.
So, Richie, one of the key principles in anti-time management is a concept you call time tipping. And specifically you talk about, purpose, priorities, practices, and payments. Can you just introduce us to what time tipping really is and and again, just for context, I mean, the folks on the phone today are either from family-owned businesses or they're advisors to family businesses.
So you have to think about it this way. And also I understand that me and the way I'm saying it may or may not resonate with you. So you have to obviously apply it to your own personal situation and what you're trying to do. But time tipping essentially means reclaiming your time. So if you feel like you're doing things, but you're not actually doing the things that you want, you're obviously smart enough to reverse that. But for some reason you've chosen, and I'm saying it, that is an actual cognitive, conscious decision for you not to have time. I am a mentee or pupil of Stephen Covey. I'm sure all of you know who he is in the 7 Habits. Okay? He came on the heels of Peter Drucker. And he would say, like, I knew him before he passed away. He was at my wedding. I'm just letting you know for context. I know the man. Okay? And his son, Stephen M.R. Covey, is a mentor of mine, endorses all my books, work with him. I'm coming from like a place of love when I say this. When he said begin with the end in mind, he never said begin with means in mind. Never uttered. And yet everyone thinks and mistakes ends for means. To overcome that, ask yourself, what's the goal of the goal? What's the job of the goal? Like Clayton Christian said, what's the job, of an ice cream cone or whatever, a milkshake. You know what I mean? Like, that's the idea. What's the job of a goal? What's the goal of the goal? As soon as you ask that question, you start measuring for the actual thing that you want. So whether you are rich and you have a family thing going on, or let's be real, I know there's nepotism and a lot of people get overlooked, unfortunately, because of that situation and the way the appearances are. I don't know what your situation is, but I do know this. If you're not doing what you want, it's a choice. And if you ask yourself, what's the goal of the goal? You can start living from the dream and not endlessly toward it. Let me give you a real one. So some of you say that you are, this is very good for family planning and generational planning too, by the way. In addition to obviously keeping your money stable forever, you have to ask yourself, I know you are, is it going to ruin the kids? How are they going to be productive? How do we put things in place so they have to earn it? So instead of doing the regular 20th century management stuff, which they are going to balk at because it is fake today, they're looking for something totally different. So you simply have to ask, where do you want to be in 2 years? Because when you act from that future person instead of endlessly toward it, you become that person now, and it changes naturally the habits, the strengths, and the goals, which are all means, not ends. A habit is not an end, it is a means to something else. And humans are terrible at choosing the right habits. If that wasn't true, we would there's a reason we keep reading these books about habits and not changing. We choose the wrong ones. So basically, to answer your question, if you were to say to someone, let me use a real example. I work with a lot of startups, and I will ask a founder, because as much as we don't want to say it out loud, for founders and VCs, not all of them, some of you want to hold forever, but for, I'd say, the large majority of them, their goal is to exit. Founders exit. That is what they do. So I will ask them, what are you going to do when you exit? And then they will tell me their real dream. The business was only a stepping stone.
Yeah.
The greatest threat to your business is the bigger dream. Always. Because you will get rid of the stuff in the middle and ignore it to go for the better dream. So then I simply say, that's fine. All of that is great. That's what you should be doing. Why don't we take that thing you really want to do and put it right in the center of your life, right in the center of your work? Why can't this business enable and empower and help you create this wonderful life that you want? Why are you sacrificing your life for 5, 10, 15, 20 years when we already know that when you get there, you're not going to want it anymore? What do you mean you're not going to want it anymore? Oh, do you want think about who you were in what year is it right now? 2024? Think about who you were in 2014. I'm serious. You were a different person, different thoughts. You lived in a different place. You had a different family, marriage, kids, different money situation. You literally don't want your 2014 self anymore. Why are we acting as if our 2034 person is going to want our 2024 goals? No. You take that thing you think you want in 2034, you make it happen now, and it allows you to live multiple lives. I don't mean literally, but multiple careers in one.
Well, and you start to see, Richie, I mean, you start to see companies that are starting to be very intentional and very, very much integrating values and dreams. Take like Cotopaxi or Tom's Shoes, you know, where they've decided that rather than just build a business, their big dream is something else, and the business helps them to fulfill that dream. I mean, you start to see that in a lot of social enterprises, and I'm sure that leaders in those social enterprises also get caught in the trap of, you know, maybe it not being their top purpose and losing their way along that way. But I feel like there are more companies that are kind of at the outset trying to incorporate or embed higher purpose, but I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I love what you're saying. I mean, I got into this world as a social entrepreneur. My first business was a cashmere company in Mongolia in 2004. Not because I know anything about cashmere. I freaking live in Hawaii, but because I wanted to help people work their way out of poverty. That's been my whole, I lived in Brazil for 2 years. I just want to help you work their way out of poverty. That's been my whole goal. I thought, why would I wait till I'm 65 to help people work their way out of poverty when that is 2 or 3, possibly 4 generations away? When I can impact the family tree now. That's what I thought. So I'll say this. What you're saying is good. It's just that what I'm talking about is one step further. Like, social enterprise to help people is one thing. Values as a marketing angle is a totally other thing. Also, some of those examples you gave may or may not be actually helping the people they intend to help. I'm not judging. You know, nonprofits have their purposes, but ultimately there's mission drift, and they're asking for more money than they are helping people. Bizarre. Mission creep. But I'll tell you this, what I'm talking about is more personal. Even if you are working in the nonprofit or in an organization that has a social bend to help people, are you literally living from your dream or towards it? Do you have, in time management, someone else owns your time. You have to ask somebody else for permission. You have to coordinate. In anti-time management, you own your time. Flexibility is at the crossroads of autonomy, ability, and availability. I'm guessing lots of people here have autonomy, ability, and zero availability to do anything with it. Sad. I'm so sad for you. But if you look at different grades of what you're trying to do in different projects, we all have different levers we're pulling of autonomy, ability, right? And availability. So when you pick the ones that are most important from you, I'm essentially saying, as long as it's good and lovely and amazing, even if you hate your work and it is like drudgery, like the worst thing you ever did, if it is creating the ability for you to own your time and do whatever you want, the work does not matter. It is the opposite. Your work doesn't matter. If your work is taking you away from your values, Your work is hurting you. That's the whole point.
Yeah. So you're basically looking to hold up the lens of ability, availability, autonomy to basically to every opportunity that comes in front of you. Like how is it going to impact those things? Is that correct?
That's what I do. And I'm not trying to be, I'm yelling and screaming being weird for effect. Like I know exactly what I'm doing, guys. I know you're sitting there at night in London going, this bloke's an idiot. Like I get it. I totally understand this. I'm not gonna pretend like I don't know that. I'm just having fun in here, a little bit of entertainment value. But essentially what I'm saying is like let's be honest with ourselves. Stop lying to yourself. Let me be clear. I keep using the word want. Let me tell you why I use the word want. If you did an 80-20 analysis, you do the whole Pareto principle, you do the whole Parkinson's law thing, work expands amount of time given, you do that, what you'll find is you'll get better and better and better at whatever you chose as your 20%. But you forgot to add in the fact that you're not working for work's sake. You're working for your family or for your time or for your ability to have availability. Most people are. And when you ignore that portion, it literally doesn't matter how 80-20 deep you go. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your life. All you had to do was put your dreams into the mix, and the entire thing changes naturally, organically. For example, when my wife and I first got married, we told ourselves we wanted to be able to take our kids to school, pick them up from school, travel when we want to. So as we chose jobs and do things, and I wanted to coach my kids in their sports. So I would tell my bosses and the things that I would do, that's what I was going to do, and that's the way it was. Oh, you can't do it like that. What are you talking about? You can't do it like that. Everyone does it like that already. You chose not to do that. That was a choice. Covey, you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other. Choice and responsibility. So all I'm trying to say is since you or most people here, I'm guessing, maybe not all, are in a position where they can control and design and make, for one moment, I'm not even talking about your spouse or your family or your workers. Let's start with you. You personally can do whatever you want. The reason I say want, I'm going to be very clear, is because executives hate what they're good at some point in their life, because it is what keeps them trapped. It is the talent trap. And so they go, I'm good at this. No one else can do it. I'm screwed. I'm stuck. It's only me. Woe is me. It's like, shut up, dude. That's not even true. Learn how to be a leader. Leaders have empty calendars because everything is taken care of. Full calendar, empty life. Empty calendar, full life.
I love it. One of Drucker's famous principles, this is a principle called systematic abandonment. And when he would consult, that was kind of one of the key things that he would make sure was on every agenda, was, what are we going to actively look to kill? What are we going to actively look to stop doing? Which I think is so, it's so hard to do, first of all, because we end up inputting things and then we have new ideas and we just add and we just add and we just add. But I love this principle of systematic abandonment, and I feel like it's really closely connected to your eliminate, delegate, and outsource.
It is. And guys, I'm like a Six Sigma black belt guy. Like I'm full on lean. Like I understand these principles. That's the background where I come from. Planned obsolescence is what GM called it, and is why they overtook Ford. Like instead of doing just one stupid black car, doing them in different colors, we'll do a new one. Like I get it. I totally get it. Everything you're saying about like deleting things in your life, it's going to work. There's no way to create more time in your life and to stop doing the dumb things you never had to do. Right? Like that is the greatest plan you could ever make right there. So 100%. I just worry that people always choose, or my experience, they choose the wrong things. They choose to get rid of the wrong things. So let me make this very, very specific. I'll use an example of a college student, and then I'll bring it back to our seasoned executives. A college student, it's different today. The kids have different ideas now. But traditionally, a college student would live, let's say I'm in I live in the United States. I'm from San Diego originally. Let's say I get out of college and there's a really good opportunity. This one was real. Someone asked me to operate and eventually own one of these chicken franchises in the Midwest. I said no. But I will tell you this, that if I would have, my life would be entirely different. And I'm telling you this because most people, they make their plans like this. Where will I make money? Therefore, I will go there. And based on where they make money, they tell themselves, one day I'll get out of this, but we all know they never do. And their life is now designed by where you live, naturally. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just your hub. That's your airport. And they stay there for their whole lives, and things happen, and they can move, and they can change, but that is what happens. Or, same choice, a guy says, hey, I want to be a stockbroker guy in New York. Then realizes his real life is he wants to be fishing in Montana. And then all of a sudden realizes with algebraic thinking, instead of this either or thinking, what if I was doing stockbroker stuff on the internet while I'm fishing in Montana? Oh, and by the way, I now live the life I want. I'm probably making more money because I don't have a boss or overhead. This is the world we live in, guys. And now, this is the framework. Instead of starting with profits, you can still make profits first. Bring in the money first. I get it. But if you begin the mentality with purpose, and I'm not saying it in like some woo-woo purpose way. I'm talking like your whatever your purpose is in your personal life. You could also make it for the thing you're doing. But if you go purpose, then you create a project around the purpose. Then you create the kind of the process around how you're going to do it. Then you figure out how to get paid around it. It doesn't mean you can't get paid first. It just means you're going to get paid for living on purpose instead for getting paid for paid's sake and never living on purpose. It is. You can change your life that fast. Oh, it takes a long time to do that. Well, you might have to unravel some things you've done, but I'll tell you this. A lot of the executives that reach out to me that want to change their career or do something or help all of their people live their best life, or essentially, let's be real, reduce their costs by 80%, make more money than they've ever made in their lives while living their purpose and not sacrificing their family on the altar of work, which is why people usually reach out to me for stuff like that after reading my books. It's only a matter of a few questions. So if you were able to do this, what would you do? If you were 5 whys. If you were able to do this, what would you do? I met an elderly person who told me their only goal was to play with their kids on the beach. She didn't live too far from the beach. She was going to work another 10 years. She's in her 60s. So she could play with her kids on the beach. Hey, my friend, you understand that's free, right? When you start looking at what you really, really want, I'm going to guess 90% or more of it is free. So it's not about time. It's about prioritizing attention. Stop managing your time. Start prioritizing attention. And you'll literally watch, it's weird with my background here, you'll watch the environment around you happen because you created a new environment. Work from your purpose and from your values and still do your business model. Change nothing else. And you will find you have more time, more attention for things you do. You start empowering other people to do the job they should have done anyways, and everything works out. Oh, I can never do that. You do it all the time if you take your 2 weeks and go on vacation. You've done it every year for 40 years. Just do it every day. You can't do it every day. Why couldn't you do it every day? Same thing. You'll be more productive. So you have to personalize it, but I'll say one more thing. If you took a piece of paper and you folded it into like 4 squares, you fold it in half one way and then half the other way, so you have 4 squares, and you wrote personal, professional, people, and play, and you identified all the things you want to do in your life personally, all the things you want to do in your life professionally, all the things you want to like do with the most important people in your life, all the things you want to do like to play or contribute back to the world, and you ultimately cross them all out and choose one on each one, you'll come down with 4 projects you need to do: your personal project, your professional project, your people project, and your play project. And if you lived your life from that North Star, everything falls into place naturally. You don't even have to think about the things we're talking about now because your attention drives everything else. You're not an irresponsible person. Things aren't going to just fall apart. This is how leaders lead, not how leaders manage.
Awesome. What I want to do is, if you have questions for Richie, I want you to put those in the chat. I have a couple more questions for him, but then I'd love to have you in the audience join us, so I don't hog all of Richie's attention. So there's a lot of people that are, I would say maybe not fully committed to making a change, but want to dip their toe in the water. And they need a process, like they're not ready to quit their job. And in the book, you talk about quit your job, take on do a project. So yeah, can you break that down for us?
I'll tell you two things. I don't advise people to quit their jobs. In fact, most of the time people come to me and I encourage them, unless they want to quit their job and they understand the consequences of that, because I know how hard it is to make money. Like, this is no joke. I get it. So I'm showing them how to make this happen within their current role. If they want to step out of that role, I mean, that's another conversation. Okay. And I can give you millions of examples of people I've done that for, but I'll tell you what to do. Pick a project. And when I say pick a project, do not confuse ends with means. Project, I don't know, maybe someone can give me one they want, we can make it real.
Podcast. But it's like, you're a podcast. You did that. That was at one point a project you wanted to do.
Well, so okay. No, it's a good one. It's just podcast is just more work, man. Like, a podcast is, again, means to an end.
Okay.
I want someone to say, I want to travel with, I'll give you an example. I had an executive tell me that he wanted to, he was an accountant making $250,000 a year. This is real. And he told me he wanted to quit his job. And I said, why? And he eventually said, because he wanted to go to Italy with his family for 2 months out of the year. And I'm like, do you really have to quit your job to do that? Like, can we just not talk? Can we figure this out? I really want to quit my job. Okay. What's your plan? And he said he wanted to start a gym. And I said, great. Who's going to run the gym? He said he was. And then he said, I'm going to need 2 gyms to make it profitable. I go, okay, so now you're going to quit your job. You're going to start 2 gyms. You're going to run them. Great. But then I asked the golden question. I made up that word golden question just now. It's not really a golden question. I said, but to do what? How old are your children? $13 and $15. How long will it take you to be profitable so you can go to frickin' Italy? 5 years. Oh, okay, Mr. Accountant number guy. I was nicer to him on the phone. I'm being mean. I mean, I know I'm being really mean right now. Mr. Accounting guy, so when your kids are freaking 18 and 20, you're going to have time to take them to Italy when they don't care about you anymore? What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? And then we're like, it's not about the business, not about the podcast, not about the job. It's about what you're trying to get from it. Because if you're trying to go to Italy, you just go. If you want a gym, you start a gym. If you want what comes from the gym, you start one of those gyms where they just swipe in and out and no one has to be there. He called himself a micromanager and he had to open the doors. Or you start one online. When you finally realize that your business is a means to an end, this may be like the big thing here, and not the end, everything changes. So you're trying to figure out how to dip your toes in the water. What's the thing you really, really want to do? I could just say, go and do it and watch what happens, which will work. Or I could say, figure out what you want to go and do, and then ask yourself why you haven't done it yet. And then back to what Dave was saying, start tackling one by one all those little reasons you said that you couldn't go and get rid of them. If you can't do that, when will you be able to do that? The answer is never, because it's a thought pattern that you will continue into your 90s. Facts.
I can tell as a leadership coach, sometimes you have to challenge people, Richie.
When I'm talking to people on the phone, I'm like just listening. It's very different. You're asking questions. When you're on a stage, you have to kind of like share it like you're a crazy person, so it has effects, so that no one sleeps and looking at their phone when they're on Zoom. So here we go.
All right, I got a couple more questions for Richie, but if you want to raise your hand, if you have a question for Richie, we can take you off mute and you can ask him yourself. All right.
Let me say more thing to people who are leaders in here, because I think there's a lot of leaders. The idea is to delegate results, not means. Like if you are hiring people that don't know what they're doing, your job obviously is now a trainer. But if you're hiring experts, even ones that aren't employees, because experts who aren't employees that own their own businesses are essentially way, way, way more affordable than having someone on your payroll for years at a time. They get it done and they require zero oversight. That's the point of an expert. So delegate results, not means. When you as a person are trying to do stuff, measure for results, not means. And what I mean by that is, does it matter if my business is, look at guys, right now I have a company called PROUDUCT after I wrote The Power of Starting Something Stupid that helps people start businesses and physical products. We make over 100 different products at any given time. The one I'm most excited about and working on right now is providing transformers to data centers, AIs, and Bitcoin miners. Like I'm doing stuff that is like way above my head, way bigger than I could have ever imagined. While at the same time, we're making hundreds of thousands of yoga pants for a fitness guru lady. I'm not joking. Like there are so many things you can do. You just got to decide, I'm not doing things to do things. I'm doing things that give me more time. Money's there. Who cares? How you spend your time is what matters.
Perfect. There was a question, Fadl, if you want to take yourself off mute, if you still have that question, we'd love to hear your voice and welcome you to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. That's been amazing, Richie. Have you spoken to anyone who's told you they want to make less money?
I've spoken to people that say they would make less money to have more time. All the time, almost every day.
So making less money is not going to be the goal. That's going to drive someone. It's got to be something.
I mean, for someone to say, I want to make less money, I would have to ask them, why would you want to make less money? Is it to pay less taxes? Because the money is irrelevant. I don't know why would you want to make less unless the money was tied to your time. If it was tied to your time and you think that your money is going to go up and down based on your time, well, you have a major problem. Because what I'm talking about is spending way less time on things and making way more money on purpose. When I was a teenager, I was 16. I told my dad that I wanted to make money. He's an entrepreneur. And he said, you're a high schooler. He's like, you're going to be working your whole life. You don't want a job. I'm like, worst dad ever. What dad tells their son not to get a job?
He knew you weren't cut out to be an employee at age 16.
He knew it. By the way, I still went out and got a job because I wanted to see what it was like, by the way. But just so you know, that's a side story. But then I was like, well, I still want to make money. I want to like do things. And I'm from San Diego. He goes, go to El Centro, which is about 3 hours away from where I was from, where the watermelon farmers are. And ask them if you can buy their irregular sized watermelons, the ones that they can't sell to grocery stores because grocery stores don't want them because they're too big or too heavy or too awkward. I don't know how he knew this stuff, by the way. So my brother and I took our family van. I know I'm privileged to have a family van. We took out the seats out of it, had a little bit of seed money. That's a pun. We went out We filled up the van full of watermelons to the top. The freaking van, it was low riding. Went all the way back, and we sold to, just honestly, our friends' parents, to people walking by. We were at the park, and we sold them on the 4th of July. We made more money in one day selling watermelons than we would have made working the entire summer for minimum wage. And that's when I realized there's no point to trading your time for money when you can just sell stuff. You know?
I love it.
It's a choice.
And your dad could have told you, but he let you have an experience, and because you experienced it, it's a part of you.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Other questions from the audience? We just have a few minutes left.
While you're thinking of questions, I'll tell you this. To me, it's not about money. And even though I'm saying it as about time, it's not really about time. It's about living without regret. This is what it is for me. It's about the fact that your child might die tomorrow, that I might die tomorrow or today. It is the shortness and the longness of life. This is what this is about. If you are in a family wealth generation thing, the person who originally started it and the people that are keeping it up are doing it because they care about people they love, not that they care about the business or the money. I could be wrong, but I'm guessing that's what it's about. So if you think about it from purpose and people first, this methodology that I'm teaching makes perfect sense, but it is a conscious choice, and it is hard to change if you grew up most of your professional life in the 20th century. I do understand this is a new phenomenon that is now able to happen for almost every single person on the planet that has access to the internet. But it's only going to get worse or better from that standpoint. You might as well make the most of your life right now by creating the most amount of time for your life right now.
That's good advice. All right, one last chance. Anyone else in the audience want to ask Richie a question before we close? We got a bashful group here, Richie.
I'm a crazy person. I really like you guys. If you have any questions or want anything, let me know. You might even be thinking, like, how does this apply to me or whatnot? And I will just say this: start, serve, think, ask, receive, and trust. Serve someone that doesn't deserve it. Thank them for the opportunity to help them. Earn the right to ask for help. Don't just be the person that asks. I'm serious. Receive whatever they're trying to give you back the same way someone would receive a ball in a game, and run with it. Trust that. It is, people say follow the process, but that's only assuming the process was on purpose. Purpose comes before process. Never process before purpose. That is a recipe for a stale life.
We have barely scratched the surface on this, so anyways. Oh, Allison, I think Allison did you have a question, Allison, before we go?
Just very quickly, such a riveting talk and an advancement in like overall management thinking. And I just want to ask about your experience with corporate executives and people who are in very high-paced, stressful work environments that want to take this on, and just feedback on how you help them start, how you engage them to think out of the box, to take on this approach, because I'm encouraged, I'm definitely inspired, but I feel overwhelmed I work for an international private equity firm, very high paced, very stressful, and very difficult to even start what you're advocating because of the goals of the firm. But I know you've worked in that environment. You've worked with folks like me, and so I'd love that feedback before you guys have to close.
Oh, you asked the best question. No, thank you. That's a great question. I love that. And it is true. I have worked and do work with high-end people, executives, lawyers in like even I even work with a lawyer in healthcare, which was like an executive lawyer at a healthcare, like nightmare stuff. Okay, like very. I'll tell you this. I know what you're saying. You are highly capable. You can do whatever you want, but you love so many people around you that if you were to try and do something else, they're looking up to you. You don't want to fail them, but they're also looking at you as an example. And if you're out there running around the world, how can you expect how can you expect them to deal with this work? There's a lot of questions that bubble up, and we work through all of that one by one. But I'll give you one thought. And I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm just saying we all do it. Our brains are almost like calculators where we think either or, where we say, if I do this, then this will happen, for good or bad. So let's say it's bad. If I do this, this bad thing will happen. That's going to stop me. I would just say, as an exercise, ask a better question, get a better answer. Our lives are led by the questions we ask. So if you said, how can I do this thing without this bad thing happening? What would that look like? You're not going to have an answer. But when you're walking your dog, or when you're thinking, or when you're working, it starts to percolate. Like, ideas start to come because you're now solving for a new problem. In other words, we go back a little bit. When you go from this to this, there's no space for an answer. It's either yes or no. But when you ask an algebraic question, how can I do this thing without this bad thing happening by next Tuesday? You literally create space for answers to pour in. And ultimately, I'm going to be honest, when you start thinking that way, what you're going to realize is a lot of times it's a who, as my client and friend Ben Hardy would say, it's a who, not a how. And you will suddenly start seeing. So my lawyer healthcare guy, he had the same question you had. And ultimately, when he started thinking this way, and we found out what his real pain points were, and having real conversations about it and figuring out what he really wants. Because again, what we want is different than what we're good at. We get tired of what we're good at. Otherwise, there wouldn't be career transitions. It's a fact. So when we figured that out, he started seeing the people around him rise to the occasion. And he would say, I might not be in the office as much because I'm going to be doing X, Y, Z. Just told them straight up, talk straight, no hidden agenda. And guess what they did? They felt empowered, engaged, trusted, successful. What I'm trying to say is, like, the whole time management thing is beat people down where they feel like they're just this command and control crap. Whereas with anti-time management, it is about trust and results-oriented work.
Yeah.
So there's a way to do it, and there is hope. And you can start with maybe a low-risk thing you don't want to do anymore and see if there's someone who can help fill that in. But, like, 100% you can do this. For sure.
It takes courage, Allison, for sure. He's not asking us to do something that's easy, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah, you're awesome. Thank you.
Well, Richie, thank you so
you.
much for spending your time with us. Really appreciate you being on Authors at Drucker. One last housekeeping item before we go. Next month, we'll be with Alan Weiss and Debbie McInnes about their book, The Brand Benefits Playbook, Why Customers Aren't Buying What You're Selling and What to Do About It. Should be a really interesting conversation. So again, thank you for giving us your treasure today, which is your time. Thank you for spending that with Richie and I, and make it a great day.
Hey, that's my honor. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Richie.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.